Welcome to the Heaven's Edge podcast, where we cover everything from the Christian life to entertainment, sports, and current events. Although we're heaven-bound, we'll be sure not to shy away from the edge, engaging in challenging topics. As ministry students living within the current culture, we aim to offer a unique perspective on the world, viewing it with a gospel vision. Now, introducing your hosts, Gavin Eberlin and Josh Gornicz.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's our pleasure to welcome you to another episode of the Heaven's Edge podcast. You're joined by your hosts, Josh Gornicz, as well as myself, Gavin Eberlin, as we dive into a conversation about how beauty is present in all things. We hope you stick around and enjoy. Good morning, Josh. Happy Friday, man.
Good morning.
Oh, boy. How you doing today?
Doing well. It's a good morning. It's beautiful outside. It's like 50 degrees already. And I don't know where, if you're listening, you live, but here in Pennsylvania, 50 degrees in the morning feels like 80 degrees in the morning when it's March. So,
oh my gosh,
it's beautiful. It really is.
What's been going on lately, Josh?
Not much. Just been doing a lot of studying, a lot of schoolwork, as it is during this time. It's been a lot. We normally would have had Easter break about, last week? Would that have been Easter break normally? Or spring break?
Spring break.
Right. Spring break would have normally been last week, but because of Corona, they've pushed it off, and it's going to combine with Easter break in 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, other than that, I'm excited. I got my new guitar stand. I was able to bring it and leave my guitar at my church now, which is pretty cool because I have a guitar. I have 2 guitars with me now because my parents came up last week and just surprised me with one, which was really cool. I was not expecting it. But yeah, it was really cool.
That was really good. How long have you been playing guitar again?
So I started during the beginning of quarantine. So, like a lot of people, I'm sure, because guitar sales went up like crazy after Corona started, because everyone was stuck at home and needed stuff to do. So I guess I was one of those people. My dad plays guitar. He had a bunch of them at the house at that point. So I was just like, that would be pretty cool to try and do that. So I did. I started. Because of Corona and because of the quarantine, I probably played a bit too much. But that's good because now I feel like I can actually make music, whereas, as you know, because you play guitar as well, when you first start playing, it does not sound like music.
Yeah, I mean, I started really committing to that and getting into it at the same time, in quarantine. And yeah, that beginning certainly, it's a rough stretch, but I think it's beautiful. Like if you have the right motivation, like I personally, there was a couple songs that I just really just wanted to pour out and sing and be able to play. Just having that as a drive is so good. And now it's amazing because, like you said, you have the option to make music and not just make
noise
sounds that may or may not correlate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my new guitar that my parents got me, it's beautiful. It's a Les Paul style. If you don't know what that means, you can look it up. It's a Firefly guitar, though. It's not a Gibson or an Epiphone. So it's an off-brand, but I mean, it is so beautiful. It's Blueberry Burst. So if you want to know what it looks like, you look up on just Google Images, Blueberry Burst Les Paul guitar. And that is it. It is so cool looking. I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I've been sticking with my Breed Love Discovery. Oh, I mean, I love my Sunburst, I'll be honest with you. I couldn't go for the plain white and, plain wood. I had to jump for it. And I adore.
Yeah.
Look at that guitar and I just want to play it.
Exactly. Oh, that's the point. They're like decorations when you're not playing them. That's the best part.
Oh, I love it. That's the thing. I think it's so interesting. It's like all the different preferences. I mean, what do you prefer? What kind of guitars do you prefer playing the most?
Electric guitars with low action. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It just means the strings are close, so you don't have to press them down very far, so you can play faster. And basically, if I can plug it in, then I'm going to like it.
And what's your genre? Well, like, where do you like to stay? What kind of music do you like to make? Like, what's your preference?
Well, so what I do in front of people is I play worship music because I play on different worship teams at the church here and my church back home. But what I do kind of when I'm just messing around, I just like to play some blues stuff, some rock stuff. a little bit of metal stuff. I'm starting to get fast enough where I can play some metal songs. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's very interesting, the different tastes in music. What about you? I know you just have an acoustic, but
hey, watch it with the just, all right? No, I love my baby. Come on. I mean, so I like a different kind. I like different genres personally. So like my thing is not necessarily electric, although I see the beauty in that. Like I love that. But my thing is more just slow. I like really just heartfelt music personally. Yeah, I love worship. That's what I started learning in the beginning, and it kind of grew out a little bit. Give me some. Even like to say like some John Legend. Like All of Me. I'm a big fan of him. Oh man, you got some country in there, keeping with the worship vibes. Beautiful Crazy's been a big one. Come on, Luke.
That's
Combs.
hard, dude.
I'm telling you, man.
I thought I could get away from country music when I came to college. I just can't get away from it.
Dude, it's come back with a vengeance. Blame your roommate. So, now I'm sitting there and playing, it's just what it is. I love a slower paced, heartfelt sing. I love to sing. So like, that's also a thing.
Yeah.
The
cool thing is if you learn, if you play guitar for about 3 months, you can play every worship song because you just need to know 5 chords and then you got it.
Right. So, I can get that genre, and like, oh, okay, that's really neat. I can do that. And what else is there? Good stuff. So
I know obviously we have very different tastes when it comes to guitar playing and guitar styles. Why do you think, and I think this is kind of what we're going to talk about today, but what makes something beautiful to you, say country music, that is not beautiful at all to me, say country music, or something that I like more, I don't know, hard rock stuff or bluesy stuff that, you may like, but that's not something that you're going to choose to listen to on a daily basis. How are we so different in that?
I think it's obviously personal taste. I think it's perception. It's what we're drawn to. Like I personally, a lot of the songs that I like to play, I would play with God in mind, but I see his beauty in those things. So like I see a reflection of God. So I want, like, beauty generally is the form through which we recognize goodness and truth, right?
Right.
So I see God in and through those songs. I know it might be a stretch, but it's my perception. It's how I see these things. I really just enjoy them. I find that I'm able to worship God in what I'm doing. I personally just feel comfort and joy when I do those things, play those genres, listen to those. But I love that no matter what genre people play, no matter what their preference might be, they can express themselves in that way and worship God through it regardless. So I think it's really neat how we can all exist individually and worship God corporately. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to jump into a discussion about beauty today. I think that's kind of a good segue for it. So obviously, views on beauty, I shouldn't say obviously, because many people probably don't know this. Views on beauty have not been the same throughout history. What people think is beautiful, what people think the definition of beauty is, has kind of been something that's changed a lot. We think of what is considered to be a beautiful person today is completely different than what was considered to be a beautiful person, well, even just 100, 200 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. It's very interesting how we all think we're all attracted to things, and some of it seems to bend what our perceptions of these things are.
So I want to dive into 3 different views of beauty so we can cover that ground, and then we want to suggest which one of those views would be the proper one to think about, just to process. So the first view is a classical view of beauty. Think more ancient Greece, think Aristotle. Oftentimes, it's describing objects in what they are themselves. So it was often a uniform sense of beauty. Like beauty has to be, it's detailed, it's ratios. It's just like, it's a perfect object. Like if you're making a sculpture, it can be beautiful, but it has to be properly created and crafted in order for it to be beautiful. There's certain benchmarks in a way that you got to hit. And the second view of beauty would be, I think, where we kind of get caught up now. And it's a little more in depth. It's the cultural postmodern view. So it's that idea that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So it says, well, I think that's beautiful, so therefore it is beautiful to me.
Yeah.
And you may look at that and say, oh, I think that's ugly, therefore that is ugly to me. And then we just are supposed to agree and walk on. But what if that's a person? I think it's interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you can see the clashing of cultures. So the classical comes from the classical period of art and culture, which was basically ancient Greece, where they were obsessed with sculptures and paintings and all these things that they considered beautiful. And they had a measurement. Like they thought they could measure beauty. And if it didn't line up with their measurement, it wasn't considered beautiful. And then we go the complete opposite way to where we are now, where it's like, if I think something is beautiful, it is beautiful to me. And if you think something is not beautiful, it's not beautiful to you. Therefore, there's no beauty there, or therefore there is all beauty there. It all depends on how we perceive things. It's a very inward focused way of looking at things, where classical is more of a materialistic way of looking at it. Culturally, postmodern is more of an inward way of looking at things. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. Oftentimes that classical view, it's all about order, symmetry, and they want to say, well, it's more defined by grace. There's this beauty and symmetry. And yes, I could see that, but the postmodernists would say, well, no, I think it can be exactly what I want it to be, therefore it is. And like you said, that's a big clash. Yeah. And it really becomes dangerous when you start to use the term beauty for people, which is appropriate and it should be used. But when you start to define by your standards a beauty of another person, the beauty of another person, which you could never define anyway, like that's not your definition to be had, which brings us to the third view of beauty, which would be the Christian view. So oftentimes, I think Christian thought would encourage the idea from biblical standards that beauty is often a reflection. If you see beauty in something, it's a reflection of the objective beauty that is held in God alone. Beauty is present. Your perception is subjective.
Yeah.
And that's the difficulty. What do you think
well,
about that?
So you can kind of dispute classical and culturally postmodern in ways. So classical beauty is uniform, symmetrical, it's measurable. So then someone could just say, well, why do I find the ocean beautiful? Not symmetrical, not uniform, it's chaos. Or why do I look up in the night sky? Or why can I look through a telescope and find a completely chaotic galaxy that is insane, and we call it beautiful? It's not uniform, it's crazy, and we still see it as beautiful. And then the culturally postmodern, and why this can be so damaging, is if someone says, oh, I don't believe that person is beautiful, then therefore to them, they're not beautiful. And therefore, we're just supposed to respect that? Like, really, there's no beauty in that person. That's pretty hard. It's pretty dark, actually. It's hard to get my mind wrapped around. But then, we come to the Christian view of beauty, which is, it's not a combination. It's kind of higher than both of the other two. It's basically saying that everything that was created by God is beautiful. There is beauty there. We just can't see it all because we're finite, we're fallen creatures, and we don't see God in everything. And the reason that we would have to see God to see the beauty in these things is because it's a reflection of him.
And we are finite beings trying to behold an infinite glory, the infinite glory of God. I really do like this view. Really, it pushes you, it stretches you, it forces us to respect and learn from other people, to see their perception of the created beauty. It's basically asking, what is your capacity for joy, for understanding and seeing beauty? Like, are you willing to be stretched, or are you just going to close your mind off to the reality of what you think is beautiful and then not even engage in the reality of the fact that God has placed beauty in all things and all people because he created them. Now, he is present.
Yeah.
But are you willing to look in those things? You know, are you willing to look for him? Are you inviting him to open your eyes? I mean, that's a good, because I've struggled with that before. And it's not like a switch. It's a process. It's not about perfection, but progression. But you need to be willing to say, hey, I'm going to humble myself. I know I'm not the arbiter of beauty. I know God is. And I think it's that point in which you understand that you can begin to walk and see things as he would invite you to see them.
Yeah, and the worst thing you can do, and some of this stuff we've learned in a Civ Arts class that we've taken, which has been very helpful. But one of the things the professor said when he was teaching it was, if someone is having a hard time about themselves, thinking, oh, I'm not beautiful, or I don't have worth, the worst thing that someone can say is, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Because now they have to fit themselves to the standards of every other single person to make sure that they're beautiful in front of every other single person. And it's really saying, it's easy. It says two things. It's one, you have to fit yourself to that, or two, beauty doesn't matter, which both are completely false. And so I think the postmodern one, it might even be more damaging than the classical one.
Man, I'm coming out with a fire and a sword right now. I seriously, I want to shoot that down with all my heart. Like, if you're listening to this and you think that you have to fit yourself into the image of another person or to the standards of another person, you need to stop right now and you need to realize that you're created in the image of God, that you are defined by him and him alone. It's not by other people. It's not by their acceptance. It's not by their standards. You don't got to meet a certain benchmark because you are made in the image of God, whether you know him or not. You are loved eternally, so much so that he would go to the ends of the earth and literally come down incarnate to die for you. I think that says something about beauty. It says something. Like, there's a love there that is so real. And yet you don't let other people define your worth. And you have an eternally defined, divinely defined worth in God, in his truth, by his rule of goodness. It's not by other people. I want to encourage you, if you're having those thoughts of, oh, I'm not good enough for so-and-so, you don't have to be. That is not what we're called to be. You are God's.
You are beautiful. I think that's the point. Whether you fit into culture's standards of beauty, which are ever shifting anyway, or maybe you do, you are beautiful because you are created by God, and therefore there is beauty in you. That's why we can look at people and be like, we're not attracted to them at all, but someone else is totally head over heels physically or spiritually attracted to them.
There's a quote from our professor. He says, even to you, the most least attractive person that you might see, you had eyes to see it. They would utterly overwhelm you with their glory because they are made in the image of a holy, infinite God. I want to challenge you to invite him to open your eyes to see that. See that in the people that you think aren't worthy of your consideration. You know, humble yourself as I need to every day. You know, like, open your heart to be able to think, oh, maybe I'm not the the cornerstone and the foundation of what beauty is. It's a challenging thought.
Yeah. Man, we're preaching today. Come on.
Oh, you know,
fan the glory.
I don't know. Oh boy. We're going to take a quick break. So Josh, one of the main objections to this beauty, some would argue, like, what about ugliness? You know, what would you have to say about that?
So one of the reasons that beauty is we're reflectant of God is because beauty is our way of experiencing goodness. Pleasure is our way of experiencing goodness. And so we think, then why do we find certain things ugly if they were created by God? Or why do we find certain things, pleasurable that are not necessarily good? And I think the reason is because Satan cannot create. We talked about this last week a little bit. Satan only distorts things. Evil only distorts things that were once beautiful. But God is such a good God that his beauty can never be completely diminished, can never be completely covered over. So we think about ugliness, whether it's someone we don't find attractive or whether ugliness meaning some sort of sin, some things that's bad is really just a distortion of something that was once completely beautiful. And we can still find pleasure in those things because we can still experience some of God's beauty in that because it's never completely gone. And I think that's one of the, I'll give an example. So I think an easy one to look at is sexual immorality, right? Whether that's sex outside of marriage, adultery, anything like that. People find pleasure in that because there is still some of God's beauty in it. But all it is it's a distortion of something, sex in marriage, that is completely beautiful and completely biblical and good. And so that's how we have to look at ugliness is, one, are we just not seeing the beauty and that's on us? Or two, is it something that's actually sinful and we can maybe see some of God's character, some of God's beauty in it and get that out of it. But, if it's sin, obviously we can't be participating in it. So that's kind of, ugliness is there. Ugliness is a reflection of sin. Ugliness is not good, but really we just need to be able to recognize that ugliness is a distortion of something that was once very beautiful.
I want to take you somewhere to display the paradox that is present at times with perception. 2,000 years ago, I want to take you to Golgotha. So this would be the hill on which Christ sacrificed himself for the world. This is single-handedly the ugliest thing to ever occur. Period. It is the utter manifestation of sin, just this greed. It's horrendous. It's pride. It's every singular sin manifest. There is a perfect Son of God who is present, working miracles, uniting people. Reconciliation is ever abundant. There is love rampant. He is the literal incarnation of the living God. And in that, we as humans were not able to accept that and welcome him. And instead, we murdered him because we said, nah. And so the living God, the Son of the living God, was murdered, nailed to a cross to die. And that is ugly. And yet, paradoxically, it's also the most beautiful thing to ever occur. Yeah. Because although that sin was rampant, although it is the manifestation of an utterly fallen people, it is also the manifestation of an utterly triumphant God who through it all he has become the ultimate sacrifice, covering that sin, that rampant sin, with his sacrifice, with his goodness, with his truth, with his love, with his reconciliation. For his goal was to seek and save those who are lost, and he came as a sacrifice to pay the debt we never could. And he rose from the grave 3 days later to declare his victory over sin, death, and the grave, and extended that invitation to every other living being to ever exist. And in that way, the most ugly thing in the world, as God often does, he turned beautiful. He turned into the greatest victory that man has ever known and will ever know. He has won. And I think in that, there is something to ponder. That perception can be a paradox, but it matters. The way that you invite God into your situation, you can see him at work if you choose to. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so in case you don't believe us, in case you're like, these guys are just a whole bunch of jokers and we don't really care what they're talking about, we're going to read some Bible verses that kind of support this and lead us to make lead us to make these conclusions. So I think the first one that we can see is Genesis 1:31. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. So right here we can see everything that God created was good, was beautiful. In Ecclesiastes 3:11, it says, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything has a purpose. Everything has beauty that God has created. In Romans 1:20 says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what he has made, so that people are without excuse. Just his beauty just radiates throughout everything. And yeah, this is all throughout Scripture. I think of another one. I can't remember where this is, but it's, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, showing the beauty and the reflection and the image of God in us. There's also the verse that talks about us having the image of God, and the image of God, he created them, male and female. And so, yeah, there is just such beauty that God has put on this earth, to the point where we walk outside and we say, oh, look at that sunset. That's so beautiful. Even though we've seen sunset how many hundreds of times in our lives, and we still find it beautiful. It's just the sun going around in a circle. Why is that beautiful to us? Well, it's because it shows the power and the majesty and the beauty that God has made, that God has.
I was reading John Piper's new book called Providence, and he speaks about the Creator and how he is creating a new sunset every singular instance of the day. And that thought blows me away.
That's true.
Because he never stops. Never stops. And it's all different. It's all a brand new thing every time for eternity until the new heavens and the new earth. Like, it's just amazing. I don't know.
Wow. That's really cool. There's a sunset somewhere right now. I never thought about that, and it doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think one of the main objectives, for beauty, for seeing beauty, for wanting to see beauty, just naturally, we long for beauty because it gives us glimpses of heavenly beauty, which is our home. When we see beauty, we see a reflection of God, and the full essence of God is contained in heaven. But it can't even be contained there because he's such an omnipresent God that he's everywhere in every minute of every moment. But we just want to be with him. We want to be fully in his presence. And that can only occur not in this lifetime. We cannot possibly see the face of God and survive. And yet we have an extension, an ability to see parts, glimpses of this beauty, this heavenly beauty, which is one day we are called to go home. This is not our home. But man, I just want to challenge you. Like, if you're dissatisfied in life and you don't see beauty and all you see is the dirt and the muck and the disgust that is present, are you longing for the wrong things? Are you inviting God to show you his hand in all things? Because he has his hand
everything
in all things.
Even the things that are sinful, he's reaching in to try and redeem it, using us for that.
I want to challenge you to grow in your ability to enjoy God forever. Although it's difficult, you don't have to do it alone. That's the beauty, is that he is present, community is present, and in doing that together, I believe you will receive greater joy, satisfaction, fulfillment, and ultimately you'll be able to appreciate the beauty that he's put in all things.
Yeah. Gavin, you're beautiful, man.
You as well, Josh.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're going to take a quick break. So Josh, give me one thing that's been able to really help in this process of maintaining this podcast while also being just drowning in schoolwork. What's one thing that comes to mind?
We wouldn't be able to do this without Buzzsprout. They are our host, and they're the ones that distribute and do all the different things that save a lot of time and energy that we would have to normally do.
Yes, Buzzsprout, I highly encourage you to go check them out. I mean, they give you a free website to go and customize to be able to share your show on. They distribute your show to Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio, etc., all for free for the first 90 days. And if you get a paid program, you can get more storage for unlimited amounts of time with also many special features. We highly encourage you to click the link in our description to find out more details about your podcasting journey. We want to thank you for sitting in on our conversation about what beauty looks like and how there's beauty in all things. We encourage you to come back next week as we begin our conversation about the other. Throughout Scripture, there are so many instances of the poor, the needy, the oppressed. Often women were even looked down upon. I mean, there's all these different areas of injustice and oppression, and we want to touch and look at a biblical lens of how to reconcile that, how to walk in a way that Jesus has walked this earth, focusing on reconciling people, not just to other people, but also to God. We hope to see you next week to join in on that conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Heaven's Edge podcast.
Hey, thank you for taking time to listen to our podcast. We appreciate you for coming by. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss out on next week's conversation. Also, if you feel led, we encourage you to take a moment and share this on social media, along with even a star rating and review on wherever you may consume your podcast. If you'd like to offer your support while learning exclusive benefits and getting some SIG merch, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/heavensedge. Your support enables us to go above and beyond our capabilities, maximizing the impact that we're going to have together while improving your experience. Until next week, peace and love.